Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, pretty stark actually. There's this observation that average male testosterone levels have apparently plummeted, over 25% since 2000, and modern life seems to be speeding that up. So our mission today is a deep dive into some powerful insights, mainly from a Stanford neuroscientist, looking at how technology, societal shifts, how they're really impacting the male brain in unique ways. We're aiming to pull out the key nuggets here, give you a shortcut to understanding this, complex issue, to spot the changes, maybe subtle ones, and find some actionable strategies. If you're a man or you care about one, this is definitely for you.
Okay, let's jump right in. The core problem. Our source points directly at modern life, endless scrolling, platforms like OnlyFans, porn. How this is stuff uniquely disrupting the male brain. It feels like progress, maybe, but the argument is it's actually a trap.
Yeah, that's the crux of it. What's really critical is understanding how these algorithms have become just incredibly good at tapping into our basic motivation circuits. And for men, this seems to have pulled their focus, their effort, into this really, really narrow groove of pursuit.
A narrow groove, meaning?
Meaning if you ask guys caught in these loops, what are you actually getting out of this? They'll often say something like, look, I know there's no real payoff, but I can't stop. And that highlights something fundamental about dopamine. It isn't just about pleasure. Its real power is in motivation and pursuit.
Ah, right. Not just the reward, but the drive towards the reward.
Exactly. So the initial hit might feel good, sure.
Right.
But over time, that pleasure value drops. While the drive, the pursuit itself, it just gets tighter, more ingrained. It's a key difference.
Okay, so that's the dopamine hijack part. But the discussion goes deeper, right, into the biology. The Y chromosome, SRY gene, how does that lay the groundwork?
Right. So the SRY gene, it's on the Y chromosome, and it's basically the determinant for maleness. It triggers a cascade that organizes the brain to be male. It actively suppresses certain female developmental pathways, and obviously leads to the development of male genitalia.
And hormones play a big role here, too.
A huge role. Early on, during embryonic development, testosterone gets converted into something called dihydrotestosterone, DHT. And that conversion, driven by a specific enzyme, is what really sets up the male brain's architecture. Then much later, you get that big surge of testosterone during puberty, and that basically activates and amplifies all those circuits that were laid down earlier. It's a pretty precise biological sequence.
Wow, and yet there was that surprising example you mentioned about the genetic mutation.
Oh yeah, the penis at 12 phenomena. It's rare, but incredibly illustrative. You have XY individuals. They have the SRY gene, but they lack the enzyme to convert testosterone to DHT properly. So they appear female at birth. But then puberty hits, testosterone surges, and because the underlying structure is male, they actually develop male genitalia later in life.
That's incredible. It really shows how critical those hormonal steps are.
Absolutely. And it highlights how this intricate biological blueprint is now facing, well, modern challenges. And testosterone, it's not just about libido or sperm function. Crucially, it makes effort feel good. It helps suppress the amygdala, that's your fear and anxiety center. So it makes tackling difficult things feel less daunting.
Okay, so it reduces fear and makes effort rewarding.
Exactly. And that ties directly back into the dopamine system. It connects that drive, that pursuit of goals, with a feeling of capability, a lower sense of threat.
So if that's the wiring primed for pursuit, action, overcoming challenges, how does modern life then uniquely break it, as the expert puts it? What are these proxies doing?
Well, the argument is that modern life is offering up all these new games to play. But they're games that don't really translate into real-world accomplishment or, genuine status or fulfillment. Think about it stereotypically, perhaps, but men often seem oriented towards forward linear motion.
Right.
Right, making an impact on the world, building things, achieving things, conquering challenges, action at a distance.
Right, and testosterone fuels that desire to win, to gain status.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But now you have proxies. Take OnlyFans, for instance. It's different from just free porn. It offers this relational aspect.
Yeah.
Users pay, and they feel like they have some influence, some access, maybe even a pseudo-relationship. It creates this false sense of accomplishment, like they're winning a game.
A game with no real stakes or rewards outside itself.
Exactly. It just consumes time, energy, resources. And this happens against a backdrop of, well, broader shifts. Lower testosterone levels generally, changes in the nature of work, evolving social dynamics. Sometimes narratives around masculinity can lead to a kind of standoffishness or disengagement.
And the screens are always there, offering something new.
Constant novelty. It amplifies everything, creating these compelling but ultimately quite hollow outlets for that innate drive.
That brings us to the casino analogy. That really hit home for me. using slot machines to explain how these platforms hook people.
It's a very powerful analogy, I think. Something like 85% of casino revenue now comes from slots. That's a huge shift.
Why the shift?
It happened when they went electronic. Suddenly, they could offer basically an infinite number of combinations. But the real trick wasn't just offering bigger jackpots. It was varying the novelty, offering slightly different experiences intermittently.
Ah, to stop boredom setting in.
Exactly. Our brains, thanks to dopamine, crave novelty. We need increasingly intense or new things to get the same kick. Platforms like OnlyFans or even social media feeds, they master this. They subtly change the experience, keeping you engaged, maybe paying not necessarily with bigger wins, but with this constant drip feed of newness. It's classic intermittent reinforcement.
And you see that everywhere online now, not just gambling.
Oh, absolutely. Think about your feeds, the alerts, the notifications. It's the same principle at play.
So this leads to the idea of closed loops. Can you break that down? What exactly is a closed loop in this context?
Yeah, a closed loop is basically a system where any energy you put into it, any engagement just gets, well, discarded within the system itself. It doesn't lead anywhere productive outside of that loop.
Okay, so like scrolling endlessly versus, say, using YouTube to learn a skill you then use offline.
Precisely. You can use these platforms generatively to learn, to connect, to build something real. But for many, it just becomes consumption, pure consumption that doesn't actually enrich their lives externally.
And the consequences are?
Well, time vanishes, obviously. But also, your motivational drive gets depleted not just sexually, but your general drive to do things. And often there's this deep, nagging sense of being stuck.
A hijack of dopamine and testosterone spiraling downwards.
Yeah. And often accompanied by what the source calls a shame spiral.
Yeah.
You know you're not making progress, you know you're wasting time or energy, but you feel powerless to stop. It's like the source compared highly processed foods to OnlyFans. They give you that immediate sensory hit, but they lack real nutrients. They don't actually satisfy you. It's another kind of closed loop, just starving you nutritionally instead of motivationally.
Wow, okay, that's a bleak picture. So if these traps are so well designed, how do people get out? What's the path to recovery? The experts seem pretty direct about this.
Very direct. For really severe cases, like a serious OnlyFans addiction or maybe just completely uncontrollable social media use, the suggestion is often abstinence. Just like treating alcohol use disorder, sometimes the only answer is zero. Cut it out completely.
Cold turkey.
Pretty much. But crucially, you can't just stop. You have to find replacement behaviors, things that offer a different, healthier reward system. There was an anecdote shared about a young guy hooked on YouTube. He went cold turkey, but he also actively focused on real-world stuff, getting outside, exercise, and importantly, accountability to others.
Right, replacing the void with something constructive.
Exactly. And the expert used this really powerful personal analogy, the razor wire.
Yeah, tell us about that.
He described it as this barrier in his mind between, say, just numbing out online, getting sucked into rage bait, versus doing actual productive work. And the daily effort, the choice to crawl through that razor wire, even just for 45 minutes to do the hard, productive thing.
Even when it feels difficult.
Especially when it feels difficult. That act, repeated daily, is what transforms your mental landscape, rebuilds your sense of agency. It's not just avoiding the bad. It's actively investing your dopamine and energy in something worthwhile.
That razor wire that really sticks, that daily choice, that conscious effort. It sounds like it's not just about fixing problems, but actually aligning with something deeper, maybe our biology, for real fulfillment.
That's exactly the point. The experts strongly emphasize that genuine, deep fulfillment tends to come from hard work, from achieving things that are in line with your biology, things evolution kind of nudges us towards, things that culture often celebrates. Meaningful work, contribution, mastery.
Even simple things.
Yeah, he mentioned things as simple as making your bed, keeping your environment tidy, taking something disorganized and organizing it. It sounds small, but it's a basic act of creating order, exerting control, making a tangible impact. It builds momentum. He also talked about his own passion, aquascaping, creating underwater landscapes. That generative drive, the act of building and tending to something complex and beautiful, gives him energy that he then channels into other work. And it doesn't need likes or clicks. The reward is intrinsic.
The act of creation itself.
Right. And it connects to purpose. He mentioned that even huge financial success can feel empty without meaning. He shared his own story selling a company for, what, $1 billion? But he didn't take a day off, immediately pivoted to the next challenge.
Because he learned?
Because he'd learned that money alone isn't it. Meaning and purpose, having something you're striving for, something generative that's the only thing that ultimately matters. Finding your own version of making the bed on whatever scale fits your life.
Okay, so looking forward then, we've got AI coming, potentially changing everything, energy costs, labor. How do we avoid just creating new, maybe even more sophisticated closed loops in that future? A post-scarcity world sounds great, but maybe also dangerous.
It's a huge question. The discussion definitely anticipated this AI-driven future, maybe even a post-scarcity world, where basic needs are easily met. The challenge then becomes profound. Where do we find meaning? Where do we find purpose? One idea floated was focusing on designing challenges. Maybe game development becomes incredibly important, creating virtual worlds that are genuinely difficult, engaging, rewarding, allowing people to push themselves, to strive, to achieve mastery, even if it's virtual.
To finding new arenas for that innate human drive.
Exactly. But the critical underlying skill, the one that seems most at risk right now, is the ability to delay gratification, to extend the time between effort and reward. Think about it. Successful human endeavors, historically, require long periods of sustained effort before any payoff. Building a business, mastering a craft, scientific discovery.
Right, takes time and persistence.
And that capacity is being eroded by technologies offering instant dopamine hits, instant gratification. So the question for all of us really is, how are we actively cultivating that ability to endure effort, to delay reward, in a world that pushes instant everything?
That's a really critical point for navigating the future. Beyond the individual, though, the expert also touched on broader societal factors, right? Like scientific funding.
Yes, briefly.
Hmm.
He was quite critical of how, for instance, NIH funding often works, advocating for an audit, basically, to shift focus towards higher risk, potentially higher payoff research. Specifically, research into how modern technology is impacting brain development, motivation, health, especially in young people and men, rather than just funding safer, more derivative work.
And supporting younger scientists.
Yeah, emphasizing the need to incentivize young researchers and suggesting, quite frankly, that older investigators should perhaps make more room, acknowledging that sometimes established figures capture too much of the available funding. The goal should be fostering real breakthroughs on these pressing modern challenges.
So really directing resources towards understanding and mitigating these very issues we've been discussing.
Exactly, promoting genuine human flourishing in the face of these technological and societal pressures.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground today. From the SRY gene and brain wiring to OnlyFans and the casino effect, that razor wire analogy, and even peering into an AI future, it really feels like understanding our own biology and these mammoth forces is just more critical than ever.
Absolutely. The underlying message from the source is that our brains, our biology, are wired for progress, for striving, for moving forward as individuals and as a species. And that requires constantly asking ourselves, am I actually in a winning lane here? Am I moving towards something meaningful? Or am I getting sidetracked by these, very cleverly designed closed loops?
It's less about what you do, maybe, and more about what you choose not to do.
That's a huge part of it, choosing where not to spend your time and energy and actively finding those pursuits that really do align with those deeper biological drives for impact, for purpose, for generation.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. As you navigate this increasingly complex, often distracting world, take a hard look at the games you're playing, both online and offline. Are they genuinely contributing to your long-term sense of meaning and purpose? Or could they be subtle, closed loops, just draining your most valuable resources, your time, your focus, your drive? How will you actively design your life to invest, not just spend, that precious dopamine and energy?